What's up everybody, back again with another Mage Tower guide, and today we're taking a look at the dreaded Kruul encounter as a protection paladin. Now, I want to start off by talking a bit about gear. I've seen a lot of guides talking about gear from past expansion, like old crafted gear, OP trinkets to stack as many sockets as possible, etc, etc. And it will for sure help, but it is far from mandatory. I did this in Shadowlands gear with one socket. I did however use a heirloom neck so I could get a satyr enchant on it, which did a whooping 2% on my damage, and the greater flask of the undertow as it gives the most strength, and bear tartar for movement speed whenever you kill an ad, but you can 100% do it without these, but if you have them, then why not? But if you're lacking damage, I can recommend Mechagon Punch Card Trinket with Cyclotronic Blast card, and the Trinket Hymnal of the Path from a Bastion World Quest as they deal a ton of damage. Other than that, keep in mind that your Covenant abilities and conduits don't work here, and neither does any legendary effect. But let's talk talents instead. Mostly single target damage focused build. Blessed Hammer so you can get holy power on the move, and you can proc Grand Crusader wherever you are, which ties into the next talent, which is of course Crusader's Judgment for more judgments. Great for phase 1. Fist of Justice to get a ton of Hammer of Justices, so you'll have around 20-25 sec cooldown on it, maybe less. Next one, either Unbreakable Spirit or Cavalier. I went for Double Horse. Seraphim for more damage, Consecrated Ground for bigger consecration, and it slows ads. And the last talent you can take whichever, either Sanctified Wrath or Righteous Protector for more damage, or Final Stand for more survival in last phase. I went for Sanctified Wrath as I wanted to make the most out of my cooldowns in phase 2, which is an all-out burn. But Righteous Protector lets you use 2, perhaps even 3 Avenging Wraths in phase 1. Anyways, let's talk phase 1, which is Inquisitor Varus. Boss itself has an aura or on-ground effect around it that reduces your max HP or stamina for each stack that you get, and getting more than 5 stacks of this will make things a bit dicey. He also casts Mind Rend, which does a bit of damage, and it's only really scary if you're above 5 stacks and have ads on you. But most importantly, Varus will also cast Drain Life, which has to be interrupted as soon as possible or the boss will heal, eventually to full health. Now I recommend using a Weakauras for this so you never miss when he starts casting it, and I will link this in the description below. Now throughout the fight, the boss will also spawn ads, eyeballs, infernals, and nether horrors. The eyeballs will fixate or focus on you every now and then, and if you don't face it and look at it, the eyeball will knock you back. They usually get one shot if you throw a judgment at them. Now for the infernals, they will do a frontal AoE cone, and if you get hit by it, you'll be sent flying. Avoid this by sidestepping or moving in a circle. If, or rather when this happens and you actually do get hit, you can use a goblin glider to get back so you don't fly off the platform. These infernals also pulse out a bit of AoE damage and slowly kills themselves, and once they're dead they'll go inactive for a bit and then respawn, so eventually you can have up to 3 infernals running around depending on how fast you nuke down Varus. And lastly, there's the nether horrors. 4 of them spawn from portals around the room, they slap a bit and they will beeline straight for Velen and will kill him really fast if you don't pick them up. So make sure you aggro them either by having consecration out on top of Velen as the ads spawn, or by throwing your shield at them. Now in phase 2 the eyeballs no longer spawn, but the nether horrors will still spawn every now and then, and any infernals you got in phase 1 will be up in phase 2. But instead of Varus, you now face Kruul. Now Kruul has 3 abilities: Annihilate, Nether Stomp, and Twisted Reflection. Annihilate deals a ton of damage and increases damage taken by Kruul by 110%, and you can kinda safely survive between 4 or 5 of these, and you should never get more than that. And Nether Stomp, Kruul hops on your location, spawns fire puddles underneath you and slows you. Fire puddle bad, it deals a ton of damage, so you want to move out fast, and Blessing of Freedom works on the slow. And Twisted Reflection, if this cast goes off, any damage you do to Kruul heals him for 5%, and this debuff lasts for 45 seconds. If you get this debuff, you can immune this off by using Divine Shield, but that means you can't use it to survive one of the annihilates. And if you do immune it off, remember to have a cancel or a macro for your bubble, otherwise Kruul and the ads will just start slapping Velen. But you should really just interrupt it. Now on top of this, every now and then beams will spawn at the edge of the platform and travel across. If you get hit, you take a bit of damage, but they also drag you with them, but you can just move through them to cancel it out. Now with that out of the way, let's break down phase 1. First of all, you can approach this in 2 ways kinda. Either you try to rush down Varus to get as few infernals as possible so you don't have to dodge free of them in phase 2, and you don't have to stay as long in phase 1, reducing the chance of brain farts and you getting knocked off off the platform. Skipping one Infernal is doable without any consumables, but it is a very tight DPS check, and you potentially have to use Combat Pot to be able to make it at all, but it does make phase 2 a little less hectic. However, if you cannot beat the third Infernal without Combat Pot, consider saving it and just deal with 3 Infernals instead for phase 2, and I'll explain how in a bit. It's what I've done for most of my tanks, and having access to both Combat Pot and drums for phase 2 makes it a lot faster and safer. Either way, before you pull Varus, you want to stack up 5 Holy Power during Varus's RP speech by just spamming Blessed Hammer, so you can pop Seraphim and Wings on pull. For this, I stay in until I have around 6 to 8 stacks of the HP reduction aura, or until the ads spawn, and I always stun Varus when I run out, so his Mind Rend doesn't potentially kill me. If the ads spawn, make sure to pick him up from Velen, and you can use the first orb Velen spawns here if you're at high stacks and you're tanking the ads, as this orb will despawn anyways within 2 minutes, so you're not gonna use it in last phase anyways. If you're just going for slow and steady, move out at around 5 stacks instead to be safer. The reason I'm greedy on pull is just to get the most out of my cooldowns, and I know I can use an orb instantly if it's dicey, so it is pretty safe to greed here just to nuke Varus a bit extra. Try and always throw a judgment on eyeballs as soon as they spawn. It almost always one-shots them, and it's one less thing to think about if you kill them fast. And whenever Nether Horrors spawn, make sure you get aggro on them. Dropping Consecration on top of Velen will usually do the trick, but you can also just smack them. If you're away from boss resetting stacks, just focus down the Nether Horrors and eyeballs. Otherwise, always tank ads on top of Varus and cleave him down instead. If there's no ads up and you're away from boss, keep spamming Judgment, Avenger Shield on the boss while spamming Blessed Hammer to try and get Crusader procs for more judgment to smack Varus with. Just try to get into the mindset of always nuking Varus. Whatever you do, always keep nuking Varus. When there's one or more Infernal up, make sure to sidestep and move in circles so you never get hit by their frontal. And if that happens, be fast with gliders to fly back if you're about to fly off. But don't waste any damage or anything on Infernals, just let him lumber around and slowly die. Other than that, move away from Varus at around 5 stacks and get back in as soon as they've run out. You can pretty much Hammer of Justice Varus, like I said, anytime you move out to reset stacks to stop you from getting mind rended during the reset, and it helps so much with overall damage taken. And doing so should help you stay alive during phase 1 with only the occasional Word of Glory cast. And that's pretty much it for phase 1. And it does get more hectic the longer phase 1 goes on, but the playstyle is the same. Interrupt Varus during life, poke eyeballs, keep nuking Varus when you're out resetting stacks, pick up horrors, AoEM down on Varus as often as possible, run in a circle when Infernals are up. One last thing about phase 1, if you have 3 Infernals up, if possible, try to kill Varus right after A or all Infernals have died. And again, if possible, during or right after the Nether Horrors have spawned. If you can start phase 2 without any ads, it gives you a lot of breathing room to just nuke Kruul. You don't even have to move, just tunnel. And it's not the end of the world if you extend phase 1 a little bit to accomplish this, unless you're trying to push before Infernal spawns. If you do that, you definitely don't want to chill in phase 1, you just want to tunnel. But let's talk phase 2 instead. Now, as soon as Varus dies, Kruul the Slapper lands and any unpoked eyeballs despawn. If available, pop drums, Combat Pot, Wings, and Seraphim, and full focus on Kruul. Don't miss interrupting his Twisted Reflection, because if you miss the interrupt, you can't defeat him. Make sure to pick up the Nether Horrors and cleave down ads on top of Kruul, but always focus damage on Kruul. Keep sidestepping or moving in a circle if there are any Infernals up, and move through the beams that travel across. Just avoid getting hit by like 3 of them at the same time, as the pushback gets really annoying. And make sure to move out of the fire puddles when Kruul stomps, they really hurt. And use Blessing of Freedom on yourself when he stomps you so you can ignore the slow and just get out. Now, as far as Kruul's Annihilates and extending the Enrage goes, eventually you will get one shot by his Annihilates. Now, the first one you can survive with Shield of the Righteous, second with SOTR and Ardent Defender, third one with Guardian of the Ancient Kings and SOTR, fourth one you can use Blessing of Protection, fifth one Divine Shield. Just make sure you use a cancel or a macro for the bubbles after Annihilate hits, or else the boss and ads start smacking Velen. But in all fairness, if you have Combat Pot, drums, and cooldowns ready when Kruul lands, and you delay his Annihilates, you should never get more than 3 or 4 Annihilates annihilates at all. And the easiest way to do this is simply by either stunning him or walking over one of Velen's orbs while Kruul is casting Annihilate. He will instantly recast it after the CC has worn off, but it gives you more time between casts. As a rule of thumb, you should always Hammer of Justice each Annihilate as soon as the boss casts it, as you have a very low cooldown on it. Doing so adds more and more time, but it also lets you set up whatever defensive cooldowns you're gonna use for the Annihilate when it does go off. And you can also use a Velen orb on every Annihilate, or to extend the third or fourth Annihilate a bit longer by chaining orbs back to back. And there you go! If you have any questions at all about this fight, hit me up in the comments or become a patron and get access to the Stankie Discord, where you can get help with anything PvE related. Braids, Mage Tower, Black Temple, you name it. And don't forget all the YouTubey stuff, like, comment and subscribe. It really helps me out. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.